hell.
Yes.
And you run into what's called an EDOVO tablet. Tell us what that is, an electronic, like a Kindle reader.
Yeah, it's just like a regular Apple tablet. It's like that, but it's, the county version.
Yeah.
And I had only been there a few days, and they just came into our unit. So I was one of the first people to ever get the tablet in our unit. And I'm scrolling through, and this is where I find your book. I was looking for stuff to read. I wasn't even looking for anything with God.
Right.
I was just wanting to, clear my mind. My mind was too crazy, and I'd spend hours on this tablet. And I found this was the very first thing that I read. And Jet Ride to Hell.
Jet Ride to Hell, Journey to
And
Freedom.
this was like I remember the picture was so cool. I saw this plane, and it said, "Oh, to hell." And I thought, "Oh, what is this?" Like,
right.
I wasn't thinking this was a Christian book.
No.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have read it at that time.
Exactly.
I could not put this down. It was the most, and even how it starts where immediately he's stealing a plane. And I was like, wow, like I'm so into this book. And you go to prison for a very long time. And, I'm in jail as I'm reading this. So it really touched my heart. But the best thing was, I'm sorry, I'm going to cry. The best thing was, the way that the Lord used you. Like you were stealing planes for like the cartel and crazy things. And I was so drawn in that if the Lord can use you and love you, why wouldn't he love me?
Exactly.
Like maybe he could love me.
Right.
And I sat there and I thought like, but I've sold women. I've sold people. I became everything I was against. I became that.
Right.
And at that time I was barely realizing what I had actually become. So God really used that time for me to see, this is where your life has gone. This is what you have done. You have been lied to your whole life. Like all the people that I influenced, all the people that wanted to be like me. I learned in jail the power of influence, the power of what if I would have been preaching to these women? I mean, I could have done whatever with that power.
Yeah.
And I read this book every single day, this in the Bible for, because you have like 7 or 8 books on there. And I
on the EDOVO tablet.
I ended up reading.
So there are those tablets where we have 50 ministry resources right now on 350,000 electronic tablets in 1,100 prisons in the United States. And so you were arrested by the Holy Spirit. And you were drawn in to the storyline of Jet Ride to Hell, Journey to Freedom, and the word hell drew you in.
Yeah.
So in other words, it wasn't.
No, it was, and that's what God
hell
used.
drew me in.
Hell drew you in because you were living in hell.
I was living in hell.
And you found heaven while you were reading the book.
100%. I had the absolute most peace I've ever felt in my life in jail.
And so you were reading these books on this tablet that we had dropped on these tablets. And
I read your book within 3 days.
Just boom, right on through it.
And then I read every single one.
And you actually then began to use your God-given influence to tell other women
I told every woman in our tank.
And they started to read.
They started reading it.
Wow.
Yeah. And also I had people from my church, because remember I was going to church before I went to jail. I had a couple that I was very close to, the Lindberghs. They got the book and they were reading it too, because I wouldn't shut up about it. I would not. I was like, guys, you don't understand. God can use you. God can use you. And
you had hope.
I had hope.
That if God could use David Harabedian, a former jet airplane thief and international cocaine trafficker for the Cali drug cartel.
I could not believe it. It was
that
so
if God could use him, then maybe you weren't so bad and God could use you. And he gave you hope, and you started to understand the redemption story, that regardless of what a person has done, if they'll cry out to God, he'll forgive them their sins and redeem them, and he'll put them back on a straight path, and then he'll anoint their lives to influence people for good.
It was the most hope that I had ever had in my whole life, ever.
What would you tell somebody today that's in your situation, either being abused, in trafficking, in a bad relationship, in drugs and alcohol,
or being the abuser,
or being the abuser, or a woman who's wanting money and is trading her body for those money for safety and security, or the man who is cheating on his wife? In that, what would you tell them? Just look into that camera.
I would say that the love that the Lord has for every one of us is unconditional. And there is nothing you can do, nothing at all that you can do that God won't forgive you and that he won't help you and he can't change. There's nothing at all. It doesn't matter who you are, what you've done. The Lord loves you and he can change your life dramatically.
When you got out of prison, what did you do? You went to your church and you got water baptized?
I got water baptized on Easter.
Wow.
Yeah. And I immediately wrote you.
You wrote our ministry.
I wrote your ministry. Yeah.
And you
And
also
they reached out to me.
and you also got our mobile app from Virtual Church Media.
Immediately.
And you began to use that. It's got a Bible on it in English and
Yes. I
Spanish
listen
and
to it every day.
audio Bible as well. And then it's got ministry resources. My books are on there.
Yep.
And you also went online and purchased several of my books on Amazon.
Yep.
And then you started sharing that.
Mhm.
And so your life was impacted. How many people do you think might be getting impacted through other ministry resource materials on those EDOVO tablets?
Oh, tons of people.
It's a captive audience.
It's a very, and honestly, we would put on the tablets because at first we didn't have headphones. We'd put it on and even listen to Christian music videos.
Right.
And I remember saying, what is that?
You've
Like,
never heard it before.
Never heard it.
No.
Never heard it. And when you're in jail, you have a lot of time. I would study the books and my Bible at least from 10 in the morning to 10 at night.
So 12 hours a day you were in seminary school. So God allowed you to be falsely
Best thing that ever
accused,
happened to me.
falsely accused for a crime
Yeah.
that you have committed
That
in
I
the
have
past,
committed, yeah.
but you didn't commit this one.
No.
And instead of 7 years, you were 6 months and God supernaturally empowered you.
Yeah.
Came out on fire.
I came out a drastically different person.
And you had confidence and hope. And then you also
So much hope.
you also started tithing, didn't you?
Yeah.
Nobody taught you how to tithe.
Nobody taught me. Tithing is such a beautiful thing. It started with your ministry again, because all I cared about was I knew what it was like to be an inmate and need hope. And like you did years in prison. I did 6 months. And so the way that your book affected me and having the Bible there, I wanted to be able to give Bibles to inmates. And so when I read about your ministry, I was like, that's what I'm going to do. And so I immediately started tithing, not knowing that tithing really blesses you.
Right.
It does.
And so
I had no idea.
so